Gear up as Cash Miller and a team of accomplished guests steer you on an enlightening voyage filled with valuable tips, fresh insights, and effective strategies. Welcome to Marketing Masters, the Agency Power Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marketing Masters, the Agency Power Show. I am Cash Miller, your CEO of Titan Digital and your host. Today, I've got a great guest, Stefani Johnsen. She's with Valhalla Marketing Solutions. They're like paid ad experts, and I am really excited to have her on because we're going to be talking about Google and pay-per-click advertising, and there's a lot going on in the space, a lot of changes. Welcome, Stefani. It's great to have you.
Hey, thanks. I'm glad to be here. So very excited to talk about paid search.
You are an expert at that. From what I understand, you've been at it a long time. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Marketing Solutions. We are a marketing agency based out of Central Florida, and we are really geared about helping small businesses and treating them just like any other agency, but giving them that one-on-one attention. We're going to make sure that you have the best strategy out there. So we want to make sure we understand all about you. So it's definitely very much a boutique. So we are, like I said, we're based out of Central Florida. And we focus on paid search. So I'm very excited to talk about that today.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of changes coming down with Google and such, and we'll talk about some of that stuff. But really, this is an important topic because there's, tons of businesses that use paid, ads and such. Google is, of course, the dominant search engine and whatnot. Bing's kind of coming along a little bit because they're partnered with ChatGPT. That's kind of helping them. They're making changes to the way they display results. But Google is still, it's that 800-pound gorilla. Love it or hate it, you still, if you want to run paid ads, you got to deal with it. So I wanted to get started with this subject, talking about, for one, with Google Ads, it's a very saturated market. There's a lot of companies are running ads, and when you do a search and you look at the results and stuff, they kind of all look the same. It's not much seems to be different. So the first thing I wanted to really ask you about is, if you're an advertiser, whether you've been using Google a long time, you're first getting started and such, how do you go about actually differentiating yourself? How do you make your ads stand out amongst, so many, not just, the other paid ads, but you have organic results and such and maps and whatnot. It's an overload of information. So what's an advertiser going to do to be noticed within that?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question, and something I hear a lot, especially from my clients that I work with, because you're dealing with like home improvement, super saturated market. And one of the things I always say is you have to first go back to the basics. If ETAs are out, the expanded text ads. It's now RSAs, your responsive search ads. And they have the 15 headlines, the 4 descriptions. You also have the pathways. You got to have all of it. And you can't just be like, oh, I'm only going to put 5. Now, Google wants all of them, right?
Yeah, and well, they want all things because they're using, not every ad it's not displaying everything, of course, but it's working combinations and using the AI to figure out what people are going to respond to, right?
Exactly. And the keywords, because what's great, especially because now you have those 15 headlines, you can, sort of pick and choose, your keywords to put in there. So when you have, your potential customer searching for a topic and that happens to trigger a keyword, well, now your ad's going to show and it's going to show that keyword. So it sort of clicks in that searcher's mind. Oh, that's just what I search. And oh, there's that word again that I looked for. That ad is going to be that website, that person I'm going to, that business is going to be great.
Okay, but when you're looking at the search results, Google, obviously they always want to make changes and stuff. They always think they're doing it for the better. Whatnot. Sometimes, a lot of us disagree with that idea, but we just hate they stop, keep mixing it up, make a decision for, but what are some of the other things, so within the ads themselves? Yeah, there are things you
Absolutely.
can do to make those ads stand out that often other advertisers are forgetting about. So they're not doing it, because like I say, I'm scrolling through, it is that text and things. So what are some of the new things that have come along that can differentiate? And also some of those that you see that other advertisers are not really taking advantage of.
One of the big things is your call to action. So, obviously, when somebody clicks on the ad, they're going to your landing page and your call to action's on the landing page. Well, that call to action also needs to be in your ads. And whether you pin that call to action or you have multiple variations of it, that's really important. If you're just, telling all about your services, but you're not saying schedule a consultation, schedule your next appointment, schedule a call with us, or whatever it is that your call to action is, then, you know, to me, somebody's looking for that. They're not really knowing what to do. They're like, okay, I guess I can see if this is something worth it. And then they get to the page and it's like, boom, all of the advertisement, schedule an appointment. It's like, it doesn't match up. That's
Mm.
definitely one of the big things that I see a lot of people missing the mark on.
Yeah, so they've done all the work on the landing page, but when it comes to the actual ad, they're not marrying up well because the ad is kind of a disconnect on the messaging it's using versus the landing page itself. What about other things like I'm big on visual, things that you can do within the
Yes,
ads. And some of it's, there's some new things that have been coming out with like imagery and things that you can do. So,
absolutely.
yeah. So what have you been, kind of toying around or playing with in some of the ad accounts like to make those ads, like I say, because I see, whenever you're scrolling down a page, what grabs the eye? Because, the page is loaded with
Images,
text.
man.
Yeah. So,
Images are king. Everybody loves it. I mean, look at Instagram, TikTok, everywhere it's all about the imagery. So Google Ads has added, you have the logos now that you can add to your business, which I think is really beneficial.
I've just seen that recently those are starting to show up in the organic search
Hmm.
results too. That is fairly
Yes,
recent that, you're scrolling through and realize there's a logo for every single like listing that, at least if it's local in nature, they're pulling, I guess, from the, what is it, the icons and stuff that are in like the browser tabs and whatnot.
yeah, the favicons.
Yeah. The
That's
favicons. Yeah.
I love it because to me that especially if you have like a logo that's if you're local and you see this logo, you see it on the website, you see it on the search results, you're driving around town, you see it on their building, you're like, I recognize that. And it's starting to be that recognition. And same thing, I've dealt with a lot of higher education and we've added the images of the schools
Mm.
to that and on their ads, and it's really made a difference because you're like, hey, I recognize that school, I recognize that logo, I recognize, the stadium. And these are all great things that, again, it triggers that recognition in people's mind. It adds a little bit of trust, which is very important when it comes to
Hmm.
advertisers and potential clients. And I think it's a great thing that Google's adding that now.
Do you see though, like, okay, so if you're setting up an account, you are, know these things, right? You're taking advantage of them. But do you see like other advertisers not really, because paid ads can be a little bit of set and forget. Yes, we tell clients that there are tweaks to be made and we'll make them, but not everybody is, like you see a new feature like that, you're going to go and you're going to adjust the ad. You're going to figure out how you can take advantage of that to help that ad stand out
Exactly.
further. But a lot of people, especially if they're small businesses kind of running the ads on their own, they don't make these adjustments. So do you see a lot of that kind of stuff going on? Like, I'm kind of wondering about percentages. So if I look and there's 4 ads on the top, I see 3 aren't doing anything and 1 is, sort of that. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing pretty much the same, to be honest. And a lot of the clients that I will end up getting, and you're doing that initial audit and you're like, oh, you're missing the headlines. You don't have the image extensions. You don't have the logo added. And you're talking to them about it. And they're like, well, why? I'm like, well, don't you want more real estate on the search engine results page? I mean, you're
Yeah.
paying for it. Take it all up. Take every tiny bit that you can, get every type of extension
Hmm.
that applies to your company. And as you're explaining it to them, hey, you're already paying for it, so it's like it's free, quote unquote. And it really changes, and definitely seen the difference with some of my clients. I don't have the exact figures in front of me. As soon as we start adding those, their sales go up, their leads go up.
Yeah, and I find that, to be, I think it's fascinating because I'll sit down with people and stuff, whether it's a client or something, or maybe an employee, and we're talking about these things, and I'm showing them, and I'm like, look, these ones that are like bare bones, I'm like, that's not who you want to be. Yeah.
Right.
I have a couple of other questions too that I want to kind of throw at you. I guess a little bit as opinion. Um, yeah. So with those ads, okay, and you see, okay, we're doing everything to make the ad physically stand out. Um, you know, One of the things I'm wondering about is just kind of your take. I've dealt with some clients in the past that are very brand, or I guess the question is where do you think is the best positioning? If we're talking about standing out, do you need to be number one? Does that actually necessarily matter? Yeah, to be above your competition and whatnot. What's your thoughts on that?
So might be controversial, is I don't think you have to be number one, because I know, like, when I'm searching, I'm reading what the ad says, because I know it's an ad. I know what it is.
Right.
And I'm reading, like, okay, what are they offering me in this ad? And the first one sometimes misses the mark. And the only reason they're number one is they have good ad copy. They probably pay more. They have a larger budget. And to me, I'm like, it not necessarily is always going to be the right one. And I know there's this studies shown that, the first one always gets like the most clicks. But I think it might be changing, especially with RSAs and how
Mhm.
AI is now attributing to a lot of this.
Yeah, I'm kind of like I'm in this. I have the same thought as you do in that sense, where I'm not a believer that you need to be number one. I think with businesses, for one, and this is sometimes kind of a misconception, I think, among small businesses, that you don't have to be number one. And I'm going to tell you, probably, my job isn't to put you in the first position, right? My
Right.
job is to get you the most. In the case of this, it's a pay per click thing. So if I can drive your cost down, that might be in the third position, might even be in the fourth position as an average, which Google, of course, had to take away that average position, right?
Right.
But my job is to, if I can get you more clicks, I have a better chance at converting, because wherever we're sending them to, that's the ultimate goal, is to get you a lead or something. And so the more traffic I can drive, but to do that, you have a set budget. So I need to try to drive your cost down. If I'm always bidding for the first position, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me because I think it's against the goal. Have you ever had a client that is so fixated though on being in the first position, and it's essentially because they see their competition and their ego gets in the way? Have you ever run into that kind of a situation?
Oh my goodness. I have so many nightmare stories
Mm,
of clients that have been that way, I should say. And I'm sure every agency has. And you can show them facts, you can show them the numbers till you're blue in the face, and explain to them, hey, it's okay to not be in number one all the time. Look, your cost per lead is going down. Look at how many extra clicks you're getting,
right.
and we're not having to pay that money per click. But they won't listen because they have to have that number one spot.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I've dealt with that, and I have one in particular that comes to mind that they were so fixated on that. And the lesson, and the reason I bring this up is, if you are, with the way you can make your ads stand out, the necessity of the first position becomes less important anyway. Because if you're looking at the 1, 2, 3, 4 spots, right? If I'm the third person, but my text is really built out, I've got an image extension, I've got my phone number extension and such, I have all of these things showing, my ad, I've made it more noticeable than potentially that first or that second one. So, and the goal is to get more clicks. So I can drop, it's a bidding process. I can drop my bids, yet still spend all my budget, you know, and get more out of it than I was. I always, like I say, I find it fascinating that, and like I say, I point it out because the lesson trying to get across is don't let your ego get in the way. Don't worry so much about your competition. For one, you don't know what they're spending. You
right.
don't know what their actual target is. They could be blowing a ton of money being at the top. So you want to follow that, example?
Exactly. 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 I'm like, I like to be fiscally responsible with my clients' ads because it's not my money. I need to prove every time I create an ad for one of my clients, I'm responsible for that. I have to continually prove myself. And if I'm bringing you qualified leads, qualified sales, and we're in the spot 2 or 3, you should be happy, especially if we're exceeding your goals.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be about, oh, I have to be in that number one spot. And, a lot of times it's just accepting we're working on it. We're trying to get you there. We're just trying to keep the cost down because you wanted this low CPL and, just having to repeat yourself a lot. And you just say, oh, I just got to have to take it.
Yeah. So, so on behalf of both of us, please, business owners, get your, take your ego out of the equation. You
Yes.
don't
Please look at
worry
the
about.
numbers.
Yeah, because that's our goal as advertisers is to get the most bang for the buck when you're using a system like pay-per-click and such, because that you're going to spend a lot of money. The clicks aren't cheap to begin with, depending on the industry you're going after. So,
All right.
okay, so now I want to get into keywords and stuff, and originally I was going to ask about negative keywords, but I'm going to broaden this question a little bit. Okay. Because a lot of people, the reason being is I want to be able to kind of construct for our audience what we're doing on the back end when we're talking about keywords. Because you've got broad, you've got phrase, exact match, and such, and people will go, I don't know what any of those things are. But when we're running and managing pay-per-click accounts, we're trying to narrow things in so that we don't show up for every single thing, because I know you've seen probably tons of ad waste and stuff, wasted spend on things that were never going to help. So I want to make sure that so this question is about explain the differences, and then where do negative keywords come in as a part of the whole so that we define our audience. How does it actually work completely?
So unfortunately, I have some news that I don't know is completely out there yet, but Google is turning into doing modern search, which is very heavily focused on that broad match.
Of course they are.
Of course, which ties into needing to have a very strong negative keyword plan.
Yeah.
But so we still use, and they're still there on the ads, you're exact. So that means when somebody's searching for, lawnmowers and they type in lawnmower, if you're bidding on that exact word, lawnmower, not lawnmowers in Philadelphia or lawnmowers with this whatever type of engine lawnmowers have, it's just that word lawnmower, then your ad will show up most likely. Of course, if you win the bid. If it is a phrase match and somebody says lawnmowers with engine X, and you happen to say your phrase match is lawnmowers with engine Y, well, then your ad probably is going to show up because it's very similar. It's kind of like it. Now, if somebody puts lawnmowers in Philadelphia and you have lawnmowers in Pittsburgh, your ad could show up if it's a broad match, especially if you're bidding in the same area because it says lawnmowers.
Yeah.
Now, the great thing with modern search, and this ties back into AI, like we were saying at the beginning, modern search is thinking about the user's intent, that searcher's intent.
Okay.
And so it makes it great. So hopefully going forward, if somebody's searching for lawnmowers in Philadelphia, an ad for lawnmowers in Pittsburgh won't show up. We can only fingers crossed there.
Right. So they're trying to solve the problem, because I always think of this roofers example that I saw years ago. I'm in the Nashville area and I type in roofers and I'm showing somebody and I'm saying, okay, here's an example of wasted ad spend, because it says roofers in Dallas literally in the ad, right? Because they had set it to broad, it ignored the Dallas part, and it was a matter of they were targeting wherever, like they shouldn't have been targeting me if they're in Dallas anyway. Maybe they had a local affiliate, I don't know. But what I know is that ad, as it was written, should not have been in front of me. So hopefully modern search is the idea that kind of stuff will stop, even if you make the mistake, essentially. Yeah,
exactly.
And like I've always been a fan of, like, I don't like exact match as being too restrictive except in certain instances, but broad has, like, you were a ton of wasted spend, right? You know,
Absolutely.
phrase is really going to come down to what you're targeting, though. You know, and some of it is depending on the keywords you're actually going after, whether they can kind of be, you know, when you're set to broad, can they be mistyped essentially? You know,
Hmm.
not spelled wrong, but you know the intent. So, for example, we work with a lot of truck driving schools and stuff, and we do do recruiting for new drivers and whatnot. So, if you're looking for schools, there's only so many ways. You know, so a term we might target is CDL trucking, you know, truck driving school, stuff like that. So, there's only so many ways to misinterpret it, but I don't want to show up for
Right.
truck driving. You know, I have to have something school in there and everything. So, yeah. And that's kind of what, you know, like broad, that's people waste a lot of money because of what it can do. It can interpret essentially, or give you a lot of
Exactly.
bad phrases. How do negative keywords then work to counter some of the stuff? And also with the changes, how do you see, you know, or what importance do you see in negative keywords going forward?
I absolutely love having a very strong negative keyword plan because it helps minimize showing up for terms that don't match the intent of the ad and what you're trying to achieve with having your paid ads. So we could go back to lawn mowers, and one of the things, let's say you actually just sell the physical lawnmower, you sell that, machine, but you don't do lawn maintenance.
Mm.
And you also probably don't do lawnmower maintenance. So if somebody searches lawnmower maintenance in broad mats,
Yeah.
you're probably going to show your ad. But if you put that as a negative keyword, the word maintenance, you're not going to show up. So that saves you from irrelevant clicks. That saves you money. And really thinking about that when creating your negative keyword plan, it's great.
That's a really good example right there, because for those that don't know, like say negative is that we're saying specifically don't show our ad if they type in any of these things. So if you're using like a broad keyword list, and you said lawnmower maintenance, you would show up in that broad, but we know that that's not your intent. You're trying to sell a lawnmower, not repair one. So by putting in maintenance, you're telling the system don't show for any of these ads. And the one thing is like when you're Google, you can see as a campaign develops, you can try to predict on the front end what people might type in that you don't want to show for. Well, there's a lot of phrases that you can end up showing up for. So how do you go about, let's say, building up that list over time as a campaign is, progressing?
Yeah, so I pull, depending on the size of the client, it can be an everyday looking at it, and it can also be every week, every month, pulling what's called a search query report. And that's essentially looking at what people are searching for in their exact thing that they put into the Google search bar, and being able to see what keyword does that trigger. And I know with clients, I worked in a healthcare and it was talking about pregnancies, and that was not what the intent was. And so I was like, oh, that's showing up in almost everything. It's triggering these words over
Mm-hmm.
here. Oh, let's go ahead and let's make that a negative keyword. Just pregnancy, pregnancies, plural, and all different variations that I could think of. And even then going into my thesaurus and saying, like, what are some other words that might be construed as pregnancy? Let me go ahead and negate those.
So yeah, and I can kind of give an example that works on that too a little bit. So I've dealt with apartment complexes and stuff like that running paid ads. And when you're doing a search, some of the negatives might be location based. So for example, if you're searching, for apartments in a certain city, but say you're intent on moving, you're in one city, you might be moving 20 miles away or something into a different city. Well, you can end up, the search you do, I'm intent on looking in the other city. So I put something specific in, but I could end up, you ever see where the system mixes it up? Because I've
Mhm.
seen, for example, like I'm in the city of Murfreesboro within Tennessee. I'll get somebody looking for, Nashville. I don't want to show my ad. They're in my location is the problem, but their intent is to move to Nashville. So I end
Right.
up having to put those Nashville related keywords onto that negative list because they say the searcher's in the right location, but their intent is totally wrong, for me.
Right.
They're looking to leave. You know, So you have to consider that. How much do you see, like, for negative keyword lists and stuff, geography play into that? Do you see a lot of that kind of stuff too?
It's really huge. I know one of the clients I used to have, they did a lot of like emergency repairs, and they had lots of different of their franchises, and they were only able to sell in this one particular city. They could not advertise anywhere else. So we would have to, for each of the different locations, go in and put negative location keywords in
Yeah.
there. So if one was I'm in the Orlando area, so Orlando would have to be negative keyword for somebody in the Apopka area. It would have to be negative for somebody in Winter Park, and vice versa.
That makes sense, because otherwise they're kind of like crossing over into territories essentially that they don't belong in, depending
Exactly.
on the franchise. Okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, so we've got this great ad, and this ad is standing out and stuff, and we get the click. Okay, let's talk how important landing pages are, and so, like, what's the importance, but what are some of the things you need to be doing to make it right, and some of the mistakes you see being made constantly for it?
Yeah. So surprisingly, even though this has been out for like years now, you have to have your ad match what's on your landing page.
Hmm.
It needs to be cohesive
Yeah.
there. Obviously, not verbatim or word for word, but they need to match. And I still see that is a lot of times not the case. I'm talking about selling lawnmowers, and I take you to a landing page about weed eaters.
Yeah.
Not really helpful there. So that's definitely going to have a high bounce rate, and people aren't
Hmm.
going to buy your stuff.
Yeah, which is going to affect your ad quality. That like the quality score, yes, but if you get that high bounce rate, Google's going to see that too, and so that's going to affect the performance of the ad over time as well. What are some of the other things? So if I'm trying to make sure I convert, okay, so if my content matches and everything, what are the things, like, if you're constructing a landing page today, what are the things that you're going to want to make sure are incorporated into it to get that page to convert?
Definitely the call to action being above the fold or above being scrolling down. You don't want them to have to scroll to the bottom in order to do whatever that call to action is. If it's filling out a form, that should be right on the top. And speaking of forms, you don't need to be asking them 200 questions to fill in, because
Hmm.
I believe it was in a book called Social Selling that mentioned the less you have, the less
Yeah.
fields, more likely they're going to fill out the form.
Yeah, it's like six or something.
Hmm.
You mentioned education, and I've got a client we've been working with, and it's they want to ask everything to, like, register students for, like, summer camps. I'm like, no, the point of the form and everything is to generate interest. Send them that thing afterwards. Once you know that they're ready to enroll someone in whatever class, or initially you're just trying to get a conversation for what you do. Yeah, and I think the average is something like 5 or 6 fields. Is like,
Yeah,
you
4 to 7 is the sweet spot.
yeah. Yeah, and so if you've got more than that, I mean, it's an overwhelm. And I think one of the mistakes is, like, depending on your call to action or what you're asking for in those form fields and such, um, you want to make sure it doesn't sound like you're making. It could be you're getting an estimate. You know, don't
Hmm.
make it sound like you're making some commitment to do business with them right on the spot and such. It is whatever. If you're a service related business, or if you're a lawyer or something, say, hey, get a consultation, get a free quote, free estimate, whatever it is that you're going to do. Okay, don't make it sound like you are committed to doing business with them, right at that spot, because I've seen that they use the
Yeah.
text wrong. Yeah. What are some of the other key things that you see that people are doing wrong, and what would you recommend?
Yeah, a lot of times it's also way too much information, way too much text on the page, where it sort of just makes it so much where I'm just like, I don't want to read this. I just wanted to get to the point of what the ad was. And I have to look for what I was searching for in all this mess. So it needs to be very clean, concise, straight to the point. If I want to dig in more, I can click on one of the buttons up at the top in your menu
Hmm.
to go explore more if I want to. That's definitely something I've seen needing to get fixed.
Okay, so that you just hit on something that I've got to ask the question. Um, Navigation, landing pages. Navigation, is it a yes or no thing? Because we've seen plenty of landing pages that have no nav. The idea is to trap you on the page, get you to take the action right there. In some cases, I agree with it, but what's your kind of thoughts on it? Because and I think I know where you're going to go, but
I'm sort of in the same, but it depends on what you're asking them to do and depends on the business. If you're selling lawnmowers, yeah, your landing page should be this lawnmower that you have this great sale and whatever. But I then maybe not just need a lawnmower. I just bought a new house. I need, a weed eater. I need a leaf blower or whatever other tools possibly. So I should at that point be able to go and search. But if you are simply selling, say, an ebook and you don't have any other good stuff for them to scour on your website, okay, then that makes sense maybe not to have the navigation. I think it's really, again, it's industry specific and it's all depends on the product.
Yeah, and that's, I think, when landing pages first really became a thing, a decade plus ago and stuff, I think everybody went to this, and we used to see these like really long freaking scroll forever, and it's like, geez, just get to the point of what you want me to do. But that was great for informational products, right? You're trying to explain that product and everything. But when you're trying to sell a service and you have other things or individual products that are like physical products and stuff, taking away all the, the header and the navigation, I understand you're trying to get them to take an action, but the action may have to happen on another page because they need to get maybe a little more comfortable with you as a company. They want to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah. But the other thing, if you have a client that is like, no, I don't want a navigation up at the top, I just want my landing page, then suggesting doing A/B testing. Test, duplicate your ad, everything identical, just changing up your landing page and see which one performs better. It might surprise you, might surprise your marketer. You never know. So that's...
When you're working with businesses and you're setting up the landing pages, like what are your thoughts on, because I like to include things, you want some sort of like social proof. If you've got testimonials, if you've got, you're a Better Business Bureau member and stuff. And I know like with contractors, that's really important because some industries have very bad reputations and such,
yes.
So what are your, thoughts on the things that you need to be including on your landing page along those lines?
Oh, I just saw the most beautiful landing page. Somebody's trying to sell a service to my company. And so I'm like, let me see what's on their landing page they sent me. And it had everything that I needed up at the top, my little call to action that they sent me. And then looking at the bottom, it talked about the product. It showed reviews. It showed, videos of people using this product. And I'm like, wow, okay. I liked it because it was relatable and made it, other people like it. This isn't, a fly by night scammy kind of thing. So I'm all for it. If you have the social proof, show it proudly like a badge.
Yeah, no, that's great. So at the top of your landing page, you want to be focused on things like headlines, how to get a hold of them. And then as you scroll through, if you've got their interest, then you want to, because you can only show so much above the fold. And when you talk phones, it's a whole different, story. So
Right.
you want to make sure that your information is well organized. So you have your most important pieces, towards that top. And then as you're scrolling down, though, you still have more things that are reinforcing. Yeah. Everything that you're trying to, whatever you're trying to offer them. And as a company too, not some of your reinforcement is not necessarily on the product or service, but your company and your reputation.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, that speaks volumes to me to see that.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm going to get in this last topic, but I'm going to combine this because it was going to be like two questions originally, but I think it can be really one. Where do you see Google going in the context of AI? But also, we know that for the last few years, all the privacy issues and such. Where do you see Google going with it all?
I'm a huge fan of AI. You just have to be really nice before it takes over the world.
So you're not one of the ones that eliminates, right?
No, exactly. You got to be nice. Please answer this question for me. Oh, thank you for the answer, AI. But
That's good. That's really good.
Oh yeah, I'm like, man, I have such good behaviors when I'm asking like Chat GPT
Yeah,
and all
right.
those things.
Yeah,
I'm
we're all
like,
really
please
polite.
tell me
Yeah,
this.
thank you, chat, for answering my question.
Oh yeah. But especially one of the things, there's so much Google's coming out with that they haven't yet released. But it's in the works, and it is very exciting to me because it takes away a lot of the mental capacity of having to plan ads, because Google's using AI to sort of figure out what works best for intent on the searches part, what works best to spend your money. You know, you're giving 500, 1,000, $1 million a month to Google to spend on ads.
Yeah.
They want to spend it efficiently so that you can keep coming back to them and not leave them for another platform. So I really like that they're changing up the bidding structures. They're going in and being able to pull images off of your website, so you don't even have to download this anymore. They're creating headlines for you and really taking that away from you having to do. Why, obviously you still need to verify everything because nothing's perfect. I think it's great. And that goes back into privacy with Google putting in a lot of these new privacy policies coming in and understanding that I really don't want to share my information with some third party that I just went to their website to see if it matches what I need.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I'm being asked, oh, are these cookies okay?
Yeah.
No, I don't want you to follow me. I don't need to see your ad next on Instagram while I'm scrolling or wherever I'm at. I'm good.
Hmm.
So I really like that Google is eliminating those third party cookies and really pushing for having first party information and cookies being used to generate ads and retargeting.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't actually thought about it until you were, talking about it there. Because of third party and cookies and stuff going away, but it's like, how do the ads end up, targeting? But with the AI, it can be more predictive on the behaviors and stuff to still generate the audience, but need less actual personal information to do it. That's
Exactly.
what you're, kind of thinking it's going to go is like AI is sort of being a substitute for some of the stuff that we've needed from a personal information standpoint.
Exactly. So if like on Facebook, and Facebook isn't where my favorite place to play. I totally prefer
Oh,
Google Ads, but they have where you can upload your audience, and this audience comes from your first party information. So people that have signed up for your emails, people that
mm,
are your current clients, and they make lookalike audiences. Google has
hmm,
something very similar to that. They're getting rid of similar audiences and is going to customer match types. But it's interesting because once you upload that, Google can find people using AI that are similar to these people, have similar behaviors to the people that you uploaded. And it's going to build trust, because now when you come to my website, I'm not tracking your cookies. I'm
yeah.
not doing any of that. And so I'm like, oh, I like you a little bit better because I don't have to worry that you're going to sell my information, because I don't know what these third party people are doing with my cookies. I mean, heck,
Yeah,
I don't even know what Facebook and Google are doing with my cookies and
sure.
information. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting on where it'll be able to go. They've kind of taken a while to roll out the privacy restrictions in a sense, because in the background, without really mentioning it too much, they're developing alternatives and other ways to build the same kind of audiences that don't infringe, but they needed some time to
exactly.
do it essentially.
Oh, yeah. And I really like that they're taking a stance similar to how they're doing over in Europe with the GDPR.
Yeah.
I messed up that acronym, I'm sure.
No, you got
But
it
how
right.
they're,
I don't,
woohoo!
yeah, try to remember what it all stands for, but
Exactly. And I really like that, because I really like how their privacy is, how you have to be upfront about, you have to have those
Mhm.
being able to opt out, and how Google is rolling that out to the US as well, because we don't have a lot of that. We pretty much just give our information away. So it's definitely going to be very interesting over probably the next year or two to see all the different stuff that Google is rolling out that we can use and,
Yeah, and as advertising as a whole, everything in the paid ad space, that's online, it's a lot of it's, like Facebook and stuff, and programmatic advertising all ends up kind of following suit, not following Google per se, but because of what Google is doing in other companies, it's sort of a collective effort, on different
absolutely.
platforms and ways of advertising to go that route.
Oh yeah, I'm even seeing it in Microsoft now. The talks of how they're changing. They're going to be more secure than Google. They don't do this with your information. And It's quite interesting. I'm like, okay, well, okay. I appreciate, this is the trend going to privacy.
Yeah, well, like I say, if you can't beat it, take advantage of it.
Exactly.
You know,
I
and
mean,
yeah, and that's what they're doing. Well, I mean, that's what they're doing from a, they're saying, hey, we are more secure and whatnot. They're using it as a competitive advantage instead of saying, we're not going to do it. Let's say, yeah, not only are we going to do it, we're going to try to go as far with it as we can, because we've also figured out other ways that we're going to make our advertising work. But when I say
exactly.
it, because and of course, Bing and stuff has played second fiddle to Google for about 2 decades now. So
Yes, they have.
so
So,
this has been a great conversation. I think there's
yes,
a lot, paid ads are something that can really be taken advantage of by businesses large and small. I think there's always, there's tons of things you can do with Google ads. And I think, personally that, businesses should be looking more at ads because of the changing nature of organic search. Yeah.
absolutely.
And if you're a small business and you haven't really, you've been relying on your SEO results and such, those are great. But if you actually look at the results, I was explaining to somebody the other day, it's like, local search stuff, local SEO is about Google Maps. It's not really about the organic anymore. The organic, it's not really paying off and you're pretty much lost. So it's Google Maps, but it's also paid search. And the two can work together because, of course, there is a map ad, that you can run when you link them up. So there's a lot you can do in that space. So, for anybody that wanted to get a hold of you, Stephanie, how would they reach you?
The best way is to find me either on LinkedIn, and you can search for Valhalla Digital Marketing Solutions, or you can email us at info@valhalladms.com. My name's spelled funny, so it's way too complicated to have to spell it out here. So info@valhalladms.com is much easier.
Okay. And so this has been a great show. We've been talking about Google Ads. It was great to have you as a guest. And,
Yes.
I look forward to, all of the help that, this episode will bring to our listeners.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great. Thank you.